Good morning. It's 8:01. I will call the meeting to order. Thank you for coming. Debbie, can you conduct our roll call and establishment of quorum?
Mr. Messina?
Here.
Dr. Moore?
Present.
Mrs. Storley?
Here.
And Mr. Jensen?
Present. So we do have a full quorum at this point in time. We'll move on to Pledge of Allegiance. I've asked John Carino to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. If we can all stand. All right. Next on the agenda is to approve the agenda for today's meeting.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Mrs. Storley, second by Dr. Moore to approve the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
And the chair says aye. Next is special items. A member of the audience may address the board on items listed on the agenda by completing a speaker card. You will be called upon to make your comments at the time the item is discussed. Please use the microphone and state your name, although it's optional. Comments will only be heard regarding items on the special meeting agenda, and the board president will limit your comments to 2 minutes. Debbie, do we have any speaker
For
cards?
different items, yes.
Okay, later on in the agenda. Okay.
I put one in for this too.
For what?
The first one.
Yeah, we will explain when, if I may. Special meeting, we will have the comments. They will take place actually immediately. We will have the presentation from the board member, comments from the audience, and then discussion from the board. Okay. We'll explain in just a moment. Okay.
All right, so our first item is to conduct candidate interviews for a provisional appointment to vacant governing board seat. Mr. Coleman, would you make some comments, please?
Yes. We wanted to thank everyone for coming today for this very important process. And it is important we recognize that the procedures utilized for the selection of a governing board replacement for Mr. James Webb be both transparent and fair. Board President, Mr. Bob Jensen, and I consulted with our legal counsel, Wendy Wiles, to put together these procedures this week and outlined a process. And I wanted to go over that process with everyone so they have a clear understanding how this will go today. So this, first of all, is a special meeting, and what that means is that there's no general public comments session. Those who are here today have the opportunity to speak to every item that's on the agenda, but their comments need to be restricted to the items that are on the agenda. And the way that will work, once again, is for example, if we have the interview process, we will go through all of the applicants being interviewed, and then we will have the opportunity for those who have put in to actually make public comments on the process or any of the candidates. We'll follow that, and then we will have board discussion and or votes. Okay. The questions were shared in advance. They were emailed copies of potential interview questions on Wednesday, June 21st. These questions were similar to those questions that we've used in previous board selection process. Each candidate will be given approximately 10 minutes to answer 5 questions during the interview. And the way this will work is Mr. Jensen will begin by asking the interview the first question, and we do have a timer here. And the timer we will start not for the purpose of cutting folks off immediately at the conclusion of that 2 minutes, but so that folks can self-regulate the duration of their comments, so they have a sense of how long they should be speaking to a question. So once Mr. Jensen finishes reading the question and the applicant begins speaking, then we will start the timer. The intent here is not to cut people off at 2 minutes, but you should, when you see your time elapsing, if you are an applicant, you should be wrapping up your statement. If the comments continue on, the board president may redirect to the next question. So those will be 2 minutes each. So there are 5 questions, a total of 10 minutes of response. And you can take up to those 2 minutes. You do not feel the need to fill that entire 2 minutes if you don't choose to do so. What will happen is when the interviews begin, all of the applicants will be in the waiting room. The waiting room is our kitchen area. It's located just to the right outside in the foyer. And we ask that when you're in there, that applicants will not be looking at their phones, watching the proceedings, or having communications with anyone about the answers that are happening. We want this to be fair and equitable and transparent for everybody involved. In order to understand how this process will go, we wanted to be clear that we have set up the potential for 3 rounds for the board to consider applicants. And I wanted to explain how this works. The first round, at the conclusion of the interviews and following public comment from those who have put in their public speaker cards, board members will be asked to record their top candidate in writing on a piece of paper they have at the dais. That candidate, those papers will be passed down to Ms. Dunn. Ms. Dunn then will be reading out loud the name of the board member and who their top candidate is. Now, this is very important to understand. This is to be seen as a straw poll. This is not a vote on who the candidate to be chosen is. The intent here is for the board to be able to have a sense of if there is a consensus building around a particular candidate, but the vote that comes on the straw poll is not the vote for the candidate. In order for a person to be chosen, what has to happen is a board member has to move that a particular candidate be appointed for the role. It has to be seconded, and then there has to be a majority vote. But all of this is transparent. Everyone will see actually what's happening in this process. And so we wanted you to understand. So we'll go through that first process. And if that does not generate a vote that is a majority vote, if there's still need for more discussion, we will move to round 2. Round 2 will involve the board members conducting a more in-depth straw poll. And that straw poll will be, they will be ranking their top 3 candidates. And I want you to see the logic behind this is when we go through an interview process here in the Hart District, oftentimes we will be done with the interviews themselves. We'll be then retiring sort of behind closed doors and having discussions. And sometimes if we reach an impasse, if we're not quite clear that there's consensus on something, we might say, who are your top 3? We'll list those, and sometimes that helps unlock some consensus because you see really, it's not my top candidate, but it was my number 2, and I could live with that, okay? But if we're gonna do that, we need to make sure it's entirely transparent and everyone sees the entire process. So we're conducting this in the open. If we are to round 2, the board members will rank their top 3. Their top candidate will be given 3 points. Their second candidate in line will receive 2. And their third candidate will receive 1. Again, this is a straw poll. This is not a vote for the selection of the candidate. That will then be passed again to Debbie. Ms. Dunn will read out and show folks, we will be depicting it, what the votes were by board members, and then the tally of points for each of the different applicants. And at any time, just as in round 1, any member of the governing board can move to appoint, and then we can go through the process if there is a second, and then there can be a vote. If that still has not resulted in a majority vote, we can, if necessary, move to round 3, which would involve calling all the candidates back in and asking them an additional 2 questions that we have drawn from the California School Boards Association recommended list of questions for the board appointment process, okay? And so again, this is analogous to what we would do in an interview. Sometimes if we're not sure between a number of candidates, sometimes we'll call them back in for a second interview, okay? And so if we get to a 3rd round, we would do that. And then we would go through that same process of ranking the candidates and then offering the opportunity for the board to make a motion and a second. Round 2 and round 3 are only as necessary. This can be completed as soon or as late as it takes for the board to have the discussion they need to come to consensus and make a move for a majority vote. So that is the process. And I think I've covered anything else that we talked about, Mr. Jensen, that we need to
We've covered it.
Okay. That concludes my presentation of the processes that we will undertake for this interview. How did we say that the So what we will ask now is, we will have Tiger White, who is on our schedule for the first applicant, will remain here in the room, and we would ask all the rest of the applicants to retire back to our waiting area, and we will come bring you in when the time comes for this process.
Does the audience stay?
The audience stays.
Okay, can we also ask that the audience not use their cell phones during this time?
We can request it. We could ask folks to respect the integrity of this process by making sure that everybody has an equal opportunity. I think that's what we would say.
That's
Yes.
exactly the words I wanted to say.
Okay, just for my fellow board members, before Tiger White approaches and we begin, we have 5 questions. I'll read the first question. Linda, I'd like you to read the second, Dr. Moore the third, Mr. Messina the fourth. I will read the 5th question, and we'll do that for all of the interviews. So our first person to interview is Tiger White. If Tiger is here, could you please approach the microphone?
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll read the first question, and then we'll have your response, and then we'll go down with the rest of the questions.
I think all
Thank
the
you.
candidates aren't out of the room, sir.
Oh, okay.
Oh, we'll pause, Tiger.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
John, if you can close the door also after departing, thank you. All right, does it look like everyone's here that should be? Okay, Tiger, the first question is, please take a minute to share with us what your campaign speech might sound like if you were running for a position with the Hart District Governing Board. Feel free to include bullet points on what you think is right about the district and what areas you would like to improve or expand upon.
Hello, my name is Tiger White, and I'm running for a position on the William Hart Governing Board. There are many things that I find that are being done right by the board. I currently respect the current board members. They continue to maintain excellence in academics. They are very fiscally responsible. They are continuing to keep our campuses safe, and they promote wellness resources. Things that I would do if I'm elected is I would make safety a priority. As a volunteer EMT, I know that the first priority is scene safety. This means safety from school shootings, as well as safety from bullying and any other safety issues with the children and the teachers on campus. I would respect the diversity of the students, the teachers, and the community. I would make that a priority. I would do that by modeling respect at the board meetings as a board member. I think that better teacher retention is very important. Programs are great, but it's the people that really matter. And the students are our priority, and the teachers are the ones that help to teach them. So we need to make sure that the teacher retention is a priority. I believe in a solid foundation in the basics. The core knowledge, we need to focus on that at the beginning, but I also think we need to teach children logic, critical thinking, and debate. We need to teach them how to think rather than teach them what to think. I also think that special education is a priority. Having one child that was in special education and had an IEP, I think that we need to focus on that and make sure that we have fewer lawsuits and that we make sure that we meet the needs of those special needs students. I have a daughter that grew up in Switzerland and a grandson that grows up in Switzerland, so I know the priority of having multiple languages and a global worldview is very important. So in addition to the basics, I think at the higher levels, and even at the younger levels, because I wish I had learned a language at a younger age, are a priority as well. And finally, I think that parents should have a voice in how their children are being taught. All parents, all sides, they need to be listened to. And that's what I would do if I'm elected, so please vote for me.
Thank you. We'll move on now to our second question, Mrs. Storley.
As a board member, what do you see your primary purpose or primary role? How would you fulfill that role as a member of the governing board?
Well, I believe my primary role is making sure that we meet the needs of the student and meet our mission of higher education in the students. As far as managing the oversight of the taxpayer dollars, I served as treasurer and chief financial officer of the Friends of the Santa Clarita Public Library from its inception in 2012, late 2011 to 2012, through 2016. I was continually reelected for that position. I did step down at that point. I felt that someone else needed to step in. I didn't want to become a permanent fixture at that position. I became vice president. I'm currently acting president, but I did learn a lot about management of finances on a board during that. As well, I do volunteer work with the disaster action team with the Red Cross, and it's very important in that position that we ensure that, that every donor dollar is wisely used. And I would transfer those skills to my position in the school board.
Thank you. Question 3, Dr. Moore.
Can you describe your response if a parent approaches you in a grocery store and asks for your support on a particularly contentious issue?
Yes, I believe that there's a time and a place for everything and for every discussion, but I also understand that these issues are very important to the parents as they are to me. So I would definitely hear them out to the point of letting them know that I feel their position is important and I would like to hear more. I would encourage them to send emails and to appear at the board meeting where it would be discussed in public and a decision would be made.
Thank you. Question number 4, Mr. Messina.
What kind of information would you want to help you decide where to make cuts when necessary or increase spending if money was available? Do you place emphasis on any particular programs in the district?
I would actually want to take a thorough analysis of where the money is being spent and what value we are getting for the money that we're spending. I also do not believe in blindly renewing contracts. I believe in weighing all options, and I understand that they're very in strength and interest in the community. I know that sports are important to some, arts are important to others. One thing that I would like to see returned is trades and shop classes. I think that's very important, especially at the high school level. As I said, my older daughter grew up in Switzerland, and in there they have options of both going on to an academic track or an apprenticeship track. And I think that would be great if we could offer that to the students at that level. So that is a priority too. I believe that all needs can be met for the varied students. It just depends on how we balance the budget. They could be adequately funded, and there's other ways to fund them. So we need to take all of that into account.
Thank you. The last question is as follows. Think about a past board decision that you felt strongly about. How would you have balanced community concerns, student needs, state and federal law, staff considerations, and your personal values and beliefs in making your decision on the matter?
Well, one of the decisions that I know is pretty contentious in this town was the issue about the thin blue line flag at the games. I did have my strong personal opinions on that. However, as a board member and even as a community citizen, I always put my original feelings, my preconceived notions aside. I like to listen to both sides because I know that there is value on both sides. I would definitely take all legal considerations as a factor. And I actually agree with the way the board decided, even though my feelings were strongly one way. I agree the way it was handled because we represent all the students. And it is very important that we take that into account, that we listen to all the input from the parents, the students, and the staff, and all of the community members when making such a decision.
Thank you. Tiger, as we close the interview process, is there anything else you would like to say that you haven't said already? And if so, please take a minute to do so.
Well, I've pretty much covered it all. I do have a lot of experience on a board. Most of my experience is as a volunteer. I did own my own business prior to that, so I do have skills with managing that and good customer service. I think that there are a lot of good candidates vying for this position. I respect the board very much. We currently have a good board, and I think the addition of me to the board would make a good board an excellent.
Thank you very much, Tiger. We appreciate you being here and participating.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Bless you.
All right, our next candidate is Aaron Wilson. Yes.
Aaron.
Good morning, Aaron.
Good morning.
We have 5 questions for you, as you're aware of, and I'll start by reading the first question. Please take a minute to share with us what your campaign speech might sound like if you were running for a position with the Hart District Governing Board. Feel free to include bullet points on what you think is right about the district and what areas you would like to improve or expand upon.
Well, can I tell you a secret? I think I might be the oldest here. Unless one of you was born before 1968 here. I am the oldest here. I am the oldest Santa Clarita Valley citizen in this room. My parents lived in an apartment right next to the DMV. I have lived through 2 major earthquakes here. During the first one in 71, my sister was born in a little hospital just right a couple blocks down this street because the closest full-size hospital was being evacuated that day. I began my public education at Mitchell Elementary, moved to Sulphur Springs, continued to Sierra Vista, and then on to Canyon High School. After graduating from college, I returned home to Santa Clarita to raise my family here. This district helped my 5 children through their public school journeys. I love this district. The teachers, the administrators, families, and above all, students. They are the reason I am here. After my 5th child graduated last year, I took a deep sigh of relief and thought, I have emailed my last teacher, attended my last back to school night, and set foot on my last campus. I worked so hard over the last 30 years, mentoring my own as well as other children through their public education, that I too was ready to graduate. It was time for me to begin working on the things I had for myself. So when a friend who had always encouraged me to serve on the school board reached out to let me know there was a vacancy, I felt a little bit like George Bailey in It's a Wonderful Life. He reluctantly puts away his suitcase and his dreams of going abroad because he realizes he is needed at home. Well, I feel like I am needed here at home. So I stand before you today, ready to help this district continue in its pattern of excellence.
Thank you. Our next question, Mrs. Storley.
As a board member, what do you see as your primary purpose or primary role? How would you fulfill that role as a member of the governing board?
Well, citizen oversight of local government is the cornerstone of democracy in the United States of America. The sacred trust the community places with the governing board in the oversight and use of their hard-earned tax dollars is paramount. As a board member entrusted with overseeing the management and oversight of these precious resources in our school district, my primary purpose is to, number 1, take the time to get to know the budget. I will do my homework, research the proposed use of those dollars, and work collaboratively with our superintendent, Mr. Kuhlman, and fellow board members to establish and follow a responsible budget that optimizes our resources effectively to benefit our students and enhance their educational experiences. The fact that over 3/4 of our budget goes to salaries shows the tremendous value we place on our exceptional educators. I think we can be very proud as a district to know that we take good care of our educators and show that we respect and honor their skill and valuable contribution to the education of our students.
Thank you. Our third question, Dr. Moore.
Describe your response if a parent approaches you in the grocery store and ask your support on a particularly contentious issue.
If a parent were to approach me anywhere in our city and seek my support on a contentious issue, I would first applaud them for being aware and involved. Then I might ask how this issue is affecting them personally and encourage them to follow the process set in place by the district. Is this something that can be resolved by meeting directly with their student and his teacher? If they have already tried that without success, I would suggest they speak to the administration of the school. If the problem is still not resolved, then I would inform them that it is their right and privilege to come before the board in open session to voice their opinion or grievance. I would inform them that I, as one of the 5 trustees, do not wield the power of myself to make any changes, but we as a board are profoundly interested in them and their student, and as such, we hold their opinion in high regard. I would be sure to follow up with this individual to validate their concerns. In every board that I have served on, one of my greatest strengths was born out of my great desire to unify. In this capacity, that applies not only to us as a board and the district administration and educators, but to our community as well. Let's strive for unity in the community based on the common goal of providing an exceptional education for all students in this district.
Thank you. Our fourth question, Mr. Messina.
What kind of information would you want to help you decide where to make cuts when necessary or increase spending if money was available? Do you place emphasis on any particular program in the district?
As board members, we are well suited to make decisions about funding since we are servants to our community and have the best interest of families in mind. We collaborate, again, with our superintendent and educators and remain vigilant in reaching out to the public to find out what is of interest to them. I spoke earlier about the trust, the sacred trust that we have been given of $300 million of our citizens' hard-earned tax dollars. Well, if we thought that was precious, what about their children? There's no greater treasure. And how are we doing with that trust that's been placed with us? When you enroll your child in school, what expectations do you have? This is America, the land that was built on principles of freedom. I have asked every one of my immigrant friends what they like about this country and why they came. In every instance, it is freedom. Every child in our country has access to public education. Because of the freedom we enjoy, we recognize that parents have other options. So when they enroll their children into our schools, we take that stewardship seriously, doing what it takes to help each and every student become opportunity ready when they leave our district.
Thank you. Our last question is as follows. Think about a past board decision that you felt strongly about. How would you have balanced community concerns, student needs, state and federal law, staff considerations, and your personal values and beliefs in making your decision on the matter?
Well, the California Healthy Youth Act, which took effect January 1st, 2016, requires school districts to provide students with integrated, comprehensive, accurate, and inclusive comprehensive sexual health education and HIV prevention education, at least once in high school and once in middle school. The California Healthy Youth Act made other significant changes to the previous education code, requirements for both HIV prevention education and comprehensive sexual health education. As our district sought to be compliant with this law, but also sensitive to the desires of parents in the district, the board chose to create their own curriculum which met the needs of both, instead of purchasing the curriculum created by the Los Angeles Unified School District, which was more explicit and went beyond what was required by the new state law. I applaud our superintendent and governing board for seeking a solution that would represent the interests of our community, even though more effort was required.
Thank you. All right, Aaron, as we close the interview process, is there anything else you would like to say that you haven't said already? And if so, please feel welcome to take a minute to do so.
Well, I would say overall, what you're getting with me as a member of the governing board is someone who is 100% invested and willing to work hard to ensure that each and every student in the William S. Hart School District receives the best possible education that we can offer, and that they feel valued as a member of the William S. Hart family. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. We appreciate your participation. Our next interview is with Thomas Gavin.
Yes. Talk into the microphone. Okay. Never been accused of not being loud enough, but okay.
Maybe you could instruct John when they're doing their closing comment that he could go get the next person. And then maybe I can get a new chair at some point.
You got a new chair. You changed it. Good.
Ralph, is there a requisition form I have to fill in?
We can certainly work on adjusting the chairs, Mr. Brasida.
Hello, Thomas. Please come to the microphone. Thank you for being here to participate.
Oh, thank you for
We have
asking me.
5 questions, and I'll ask the first question.
Okay.
Please take a minute to share with us what your campaign speech might sound like if you were running for position with the Hart District Governing Board. Feel free to include bullet points on what you think is right about the district and what areas you would like to improve or expand upon.
It was written in the context of giving a speech. So my name is Thomas Gavin, and I want to represent District 4 on the Hart District School Board. I have lived in Canyon Country for over 50 years, starting the year I started kindergarten, which was in 1968. You can do the math, maybe. Myself, my wife, and our 5 children are all graduates of Canyon High School. Our family, our community, and our education in the Hart District all have contributed to their success in their chosen careers and lives. Some of our 4 grandchildren, I'm sure, will attend Hart District in the years to come. The Hart District has done a wonderful job of educating all the students in the Valley for over 70 years. I do believe there are key things the district does right and some things that could be improved upon. I think we have an excellent induction PAR program, recognized throughout the state to try to improve new and existing teacher staff. We attend in this district to the educational needs of all of our students. And I think the word all needs to be highlighted on that. It's very important. We have a very high graduation rate, and we offer multiple paths for students toward the graduation. In terms of what we could work on, like all districts, our pandemic losses. We need to be able to better bring students back up. The achievement gap, like in many districts, needs to be improved upon. We need to bring all students up to a level that they can succeed. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Storley, you have the next question.
As a board member, what do you see as your primary purpose or primary role? How would you fulfill that role as a member of the governing board?
Sorry about that, lost my place. I think our primary responsibility is to make sure that we are responsible guardians of the public trust, our students that we are serving, and the tax dollars that support the whole program. We need to use today's dollars for today's students. We need to make sure that all the resources available are put to use. I believe there should be little budget carryover, whether it be positive or negative, except for capital and long-term projects. And I think budget should be based on realities, not really hopes.
Thank you. Our third question is Dr. Moore.
Can you describe your response if a parent approaches you in the grocery store and asks for your support on a particularly contentious issue?
I'd always be willing to talk to constituents about their concerns, especially as it relates to the district. I do it all the time now, even though I'm not a board member. I think the public deserves to know that they have a voice. Now, with that in mind, I think we encourage discussion, but we have to make sure that they understand that no decisions can be made at that point. I can't say to them, I guarantee this will happen, unless it's something that I know is going to happen and not based on a decision that hasn't been made yet. Any decisions, any discussions have to take place here. I can't make a decision based on what one person says to me. I can bring that feeling, I can bring that emotion, I can bring facts that they have to the board, and we can work on it then. Thank you.
Mr. Messina, question number 4.
Well, and this is always a tough one. I know there's a budget shortfall supposedly coming up from the state. We all read the papers and we see what's going on. There's been budget shortfalls in the past that the board has had to accommodate. I think the most important, really first and foremost, is the required classes for graduation, especially the senior classes that, if we have a budget shortfall this year, we can't decide to cut classes that seniors need to graduate. We have to keep the legal minimums by the state for a graduation. We need to keep the minimums for post-grad education. We need to make sure that those students deciding to go on to other schools have the ability to. We need to worry about areas that keep students in school. We can't sacrifice the arts and athletics and things like that to keep the other programs going. We have to look at what programs would be cut and could be lost forever. On a personal note, no one here made that decision, but I've always been a little upset that water polo was cut when I was in the water polo team in 1978, because it never came back, personally. What classes can be taken at other resources? Maybe there's some classes that could be taken at COC that we don't have to worry about as much. Thank you.
Our last question is as follows. Think about a past board decision that you felt strongly about. How would you have balanced community concerns, student needs, state and federal law, staff considerations, and your personal values and beliefs in making your decision on the matter?
Well, I've been in the district for a long time. I've been teaching in the school district since 1989. And I'm going to go way back to a decision that was made in the 1990s. And that was the decision to have school uniforms in the junior high schools. It was a state law that school districts could have school uniforms. And when La Mesa opened, there was a big push to have that school have the uniforms. All the schools in the district, junior highs, except for Seco, followed suit. What was not communicated to the parents enough was the fact that any student could opt out with a simple signed form. And the district administration, board, individual peoples chose to brush that aside and not inform the parents of that. They kind of pushed them to another school, Arroyo Seco. They always felt that, well, here at Sierra Vista, Plaza Rita, we don't have uniform, we have uniforms, but we're just going to push you to Arroyo Seco. Turns out all it took was one student to bring in the opt-out form, and the program collapsed almost overnight, within a month. Because once students found out, and parents, that there was an opt-out, they migrated out of uniforms. And I think that was a mistake because we lost public trust. It's very difficult to get that trust back. I think we should have been upfront at the beginning.
Thank you. As we close the interview process, if there's anything else you would like to say that you haven't said already, please take 1 minute and do so.
I'm retired. I retired last year after 37 years of public education, both in this district and LA Unified. I come from a family of people who serve the community, and I feel a need to continue serving. Even though I won't have a teacher paycheck or any other kind of paycheck like that, I've been in the community a long time. I think this has been a strong resource in our community, and I want to help it move forward.
Thank you, Thomas. We appreciate your participation. Next up is Don Rymack. John, if you would bring him in.
Better if it was on.
Hello, Don. Thank you for being here. We have 5 questions. I'll read the first one. Please take a minute to share with us what your campaign speech might sound like if you were running for a position with the Hart District Governing Board. Feel free to include bullet points on what you think is right about the district and what areas you would like to improve or expand upon.
I'd like to actually make a statement. I didn't realize, bad planning. I did not retrieve the questions off the internet. I just saw them 5 minutes ago. I was unfamiliar with that part of the process. I don't think I can do myself justice with those 5 questions. As much as I hate to do this, I want to respectfully withdraw my candidacy.
Okay. Thank you. We understand and appreciate you being here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I'm a little bit disabled too. Here we
Take your time.
Thank you.
Okay, our next candidate is Eric Anderson. So we'll proceed with Mr. Anderson once he arrives. Hello, Eric. You can please come to the microphone. Eric, I don't believe you were here when we gave some instructions at the start, but basically each candidate will be asked a series of 5 questions, and after each question, you'll be allotted up to 2 minutes to make a response, and we do have a clock here that will show the time. And so I just want to make sure that you're aware of that.
Yep, thank you.
I'll read the first question, and then each board member will read the following question, and I'll read the last question. So the first question is, please take a minute to share with us what your campaign speech might sound like if you were running for a position with the Hart District Governing Board. Feel free to include bullet points on what you think is right about the district and what areas you would like to improve or expand upon.
Yes, certainly. First, good morning, members of the board, and to all of you who have taken the time to come here today. I believe the William S. Hart Union High School District has done a fantastic job with the strategic initiative, One Heart, Every Student Opportunity Ready. I'm impressed with the program's 5 focus areas: student learning and instruction, safety and wellness, access and equity, financial and human resources, and communication and collaboration. I'm equally impressed with the core values of the program: community, caring, creativity, and courage. As a board member, I will work hard to create a successful magnet program at both the junior high and high school levels. I believe that we are limiting our children here in Santa Clarita by not having any magnet programs at all available to them. By having at least one magnet program in each level, we can offer unique educational choices to our students and provide specialized instruction at one or more schools. I have a 12-year-old who was identified as a gifted student and has been in the GATE program since 3rd grade, and a 7-year-old who skipped 2nd grade last year and finished 3rd grade in the top 3 of her class based on her teacher's comments. They, along with many other kids like them, would greatly benefit from a magnet program.
Thank you. Mrs. Storley, you have the second question.
As a board member, what do you see as your primary purpose or primary role? How would you fulfill that role as a member of the governing board?
As a board member, my primary responsibility in the management and oversight of these taxpayer dollars is to ensure that our district provides all students equitable access to above-average education and opportunities to reach their full potential. This includes identifying and removing barriers so that kids have access to rigorous courses of study while providing access to co- and extracurricular activities to foster development of well-rounded students.
Thank you. Dr. Moore, you have the third question.
Describe your response if a parent approaches you in the grocery store and asks for your support on a particularly contentious issue.
I would respond by first saying, thank you for sharing your thoughts with me regarding the issue. Please know that we all take points of view into consideration when making our decisions. However, as this is really not the place to discuss this issue further, I would like to personally invite you to come to our next board meeting on such and such a date, where we will be discussing this matter in detail. I do hope to see you there.
Thank you. And our fourth question, Mr. Messina.
Can't write that fast. All right. What kind of information would you want to help you decide where to make cuts when necessary or increase spending if money was available? Do you place emphasis on any particular programs in the district?
The kind of information I would want to help me decide where to make cuts when necessary or increase spending if money is available would be, number one, student survey data. What do the students need? We are, after all, here for them. Number two, teacher survey data. What do the teachers need? It's no secret that teachers spend their own money year after year to be able to do their jobs effectively. Number three, test scores. In what areas do our students need extra resources? I would place emphasis on specific areas depending on all of this information.
Thank you. And our last question is as follows. Think about a past board decision that you felt strongly about. How would you have balanced community concerns, student needs, state and federal law, staff considerations, and your personal values and beliefs in making your decision on the matter?
With any decision, I would, of course, make sure, first and foremost, that my decision falls within state and federal laws. Next, I would place great value on where our teachers and educators stand in the matter. Let's face it, where would we be without our teachers? Perhaps of equal value would be our students' needs. What options place their safety and well-being at the forefront without significantly impacting their learning? Then I would listen to what the community members have to say on the matter and consider possible solutions they might offer that meet the first three criteria. Finally, I would put my own personal values and beliefs last because I know I'm not here to impose my beliefs on others, which unfortunately has become far too common now. I am here to do right by our students and our staff.
Thank you. As we close the interview process, Erica, is there anything, if there's anything else you would like to say that you have not had a chance to say already, please take 1 minute and do so.
In closing, I would like to say thank you again to the members of the board for your time and consideration. It would be a great honor to serve with you. I'm not here looking for something extra to do with my time. And while I am admittedly a busy father of three, I will make my work as a board member a priority. At the end of the day, I am doing this for them.
Thank you. We appreciate your participation.
Thank you very much.
Have a nice day. Okay, we're well ahead of our time allotment because we've had one who has dropped out. Our next person is Santa Rivera. Is Santa here? Hi, Santa. You can come to the microphone. Thank you for being here and participating.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Yes, I believe you were not here when we gave instructions at the start, so we have 5 questions that the board will read to you, and we would ask that you take up to 2 minutes to respond to each question, and we have a timer here that will show the 2 minutes so you can see that. So we'll start with the first question, which I will read to you. And that is as follows. Please take a minute to share with us what your campaign speech might sound like if you were running for a position with the Hart District Governing Board. Feel free to include bullet points on what you think is right about the district and what areas you would like to improve or expand upon.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. Well, I would like to start by saying that the positive thing I can say is that I agree and do believe that the Hart District has the children's best intention at heart. I do believe that is the #1 priority, and I agree with that. What I would help out with, or what I think I could help improve, would be trying to open up the communication a bit more with parents, families, the community, find ways of helping there be a positive involvement with everyone, because there's a lot of disagreement right now. And I believe that the children and parents and the community and the schools and staff and the district all have a lot to do with what the outcome of our children are graduating from the schools out here. I think that it's very important that we involve parents as much as we can. And that's something that I would work on extremely hard, because as a parent myself, I think that is one of the main things. Growing up, knowing remembering how it was as a child, and my parents being involved when they could and they couldn't. A lot of times they could not. I went ahead, and as my children were growing up, I did the best I could to be involved. And I think that made a positive impact on them. And I feel that because there are many people that are working a lot of jobs, they might be working too much where they cannot be involved, finding ways to work around that to help them be more involved with their children, the school, and the community.
Thank you. Mrs. Storley, you have the second question.
As a board member, what do you see as your primary purpose or primary role? How would you further that role as a member of the governing board?
Okay. Okay. As a board member, what do I feel the role is, and how would I further? I do feel that the education of our children is the important role, getting policies that help provide that for them. I would definitely ask questions. I would do research. I would reach out to the community, families, students, teachers, staff. And that's basically that's the main thing that I would do as far as my role as a district member, a board district member.
Thank you. Dr. Moore, you have the third question.
Describe your response if a parent approaches you in the grocery store and asks for your support on a particularly contentious issue.
Okay, that's a good one. Okay. If they wanted my support, I wouldn't tell them, oh, yes, you have my support, or no. I would be happy to let them know that they could always bring up whatever issue they have here at the meetings. Feel free to email us. I would be happy to look into what your issue, what it is that you are looking for by coming up to me, because obviously if a parent comes up to me, regardless of whether I agree or disagree out in public, that it's a subject that's very, very important to them. And I would do the best I could to allow them the opportunity to explain to me why it's important to them. And for me to let them know that I would do the best I could to research and speak with as many people as I could to find out a little bit more about that. And finally, as I said before, have them come here and maybe add it to where we have future district issues, have them bring it up here if it's something that is very important to them.
Thank you. Our next question, Mr. Messina.
What kind of information would you want to help you decide where to make cuts when necessary or increase spending if money was available? Do you place emphasis on any particular program in the district?
You guys mix these questions around. I thought they were going to go in order. Okay, so basically, if I thought that we either needed to add or cut on the funding, as far as cutting, I would see if I could research companies, find ways of helping the budget out in any way that I could. I'm not a finance person, so it's not my strong suit, but I would reach out to people like even Mr. Jensen, who I know he's into finances. You know, I would reach out to people that I know might be able to have either a better answer or give me the tools to find a better answer. So I would do what I could on my part to try not to have the budget cuts or minimize those cuts as best as I could. And if that's not possible, I would like to, I would ask questions such as which programs are children not really a part of? What are some of these services that we're offering that we're really not, we don't have many customers or clients or students using those services? And I would probably try to start with those services first. As far as if we could add, I think things like arts, athletics is very important because it keeps children busy, out of trouble, and it helps them also be involved in something that might not be the usual everyday math, English, you know, what can be mundane for them. So I think that those programs as well, like athletics, a lot of people have money that can put their kids in that, and a lot of families struggle with that. So I think helping all the children be able to be a part of that, regardless of whether they can or can't afford it, and helping out in that way would be something that I would consider very important as far as that.
Thank you. Our last question is as follows. Think about a past board decision that you felt strongly about. How would you have balanced community concerns, student needs, federal and state law, staff considerations, and your personal beliefs and values in making your decision on the matter?
Okay. Another one that is very close, because I know I've been on this side of that. I would respectfully plead my case. when it comes to the way that I feel about things, when it comes to the way that I think about it. I would respectfully plead that. I would do my best to listen, because I think that's the most important thing, is listening and not just hearing what people are saying, but actually considering what their meaning is behind the words that they're saying. So respectfully plead what I feel, listen, reach out again, as I had mentioned before. I think reaching out constantly to parents, the community, families is very important. And then I would basically also research the legalities of certain things. It's not always black and white when it comes to things of a diverse population, diverse ideologies, and as well as the interpretations of law. That's why we constantly have, judges making decisions that might change the precedents. So I think I would consider all of those, and obviously we would work together on that. I would love to be at the table and discuss the pros and cons on every decision that we feel is extremely important and strong, or that families and the community feel is really important and strong. Obviously, if they're coming here, if they're sending letters, if they're sending emails, if they're showing up, it's something that they feel very passionate about.
Thank you. Santa, as we close the interview process here, if there's anything else you would like to say that you haven't said already, please take 1 minute and do so.
Okay, well, I don't know if I've said it already or not, but I'm a very passionate mother. I was a student here. I grew up here. I always, as raising my children, I've always told them, take the good things that you liked of what I gave you and did for you, for your children, and what you did not like, take that away. Don't do it with your children. That's the best manual, the best instructions I could give to my children for their children, because our children don't come with instructions. So for me, remembering what it was like as a kid here and seeing how it's changed, and noticing the difference, 10 years difference that my children have growing up here as well in the school district, seeing the changes, seeing the differences, and seeing some positives and some negatives, I think it's really important to continue that open communication. And the fact that I still try to put myself back in the place of when I was a child and what I went through is really important as far as dealing with what the future entails for our children. We have to try and put ourselves in their shoes all the time. We can't just think as an adult and not try to understand what our children are going through, what our children's needs are. Their needs might be different than our needs were when we were growing up. So just being very open, I think, is something that I can bring to the table as far as willing to meet and compromise with all different ideas and wants for this community and the schools.
Thank you, Santa. We appreciate your participation.
Thank you.
And being here
President, can we
today.
have just a 2-minute break?
2-minute break?
Yeah.
Okay.
Make sure everyone heard that. We're going to
Right, we're back again. Microphones are on. We'll move into public comments on the appointment to the governing board. We have 5 speaker cards. The first speaker is Rebecca Hindman. Rebecca, you may begin.
Good morning. You all know me. I'm Rebecca Hindman. When deciding on who is the best fit, sorry, my phone is having a problem. When deciding on who is the best fit for Area 4, the remaining board members need to remember that we are a growing community. Sorry, it's transcribing what I'm saying as I'm speaking. We are diversifying every day. We are not Glendale or Temecula. We are Santa Clarita. We need to find someone who doesn't judge based on religious beliefs, ethnicity, or sexual orientation. We need a person who believes in equity for all. Our families in Santa Clarita are rich in their differences and understand the importance of representation in our schools. The person you choose should understand the demands of the district, county, and state regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that our funding relies on following that structure. They should understand that removing books violates the First Amendment, that safety on our campuses is more than a fence. It is an environment that cares, supports, and educates all. Please do not make your appointment based on politics or personal connection or what your generation believes. Make your decisions based on what the current generation needs, and that is an educational environment that maintains high standards and a competitive edge when they move on to their next step past William S. Hart Union School District. Because we are one heart, every student, opportunity ready. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Our next speaker is Steve Petzold.
Left.
Okay. Next is Peggy.
Rebecca's tall.
Begin,
morning.
Peggy.
May I make a quick comment prior to the timer starting? It's just in reference, it's a disclaimer. I'd like to just have you please note that I'm addressing you today as a 44-year resident of our community and in no way representing any other entity with which I may be affiliated.
You have to speak up also.
Okay, but you all heard that part?
Yes.
Thank you. All right. Timing? Oh. I'd like to thank Superintendent Coleman for, I'm sorry, was that included in my time? I asked if I could make it as a...
May I jump in?
Yes.
Our practice is actually not to segment out. I think, if I may, we'll start the 2 minutes, but just for future reference, there's no previous comments, and then it's just a 2-minute statement.
Okay.
So please, if I may, okay.
I can't hear you.
Okay.
either.
Okay. Could we? All right, I'll do my best. I'd like to thank the Superintendent Coleman for having made the candidate applications available for those seeking appointment to the District 4 Board vacancy available for public review. As I read them, I realized that it's difficult to ascertain where these individuals stand on certain issues of board policy. I'm particularly concerned about the anti-discrimination policy. For a number of years, some of the rhetoric that's been spewed from this podium has been quite disturbing. These comments, in my opinion, have denigrated the district and anti-discrimination policy with regard to immigration status, political affiliation, gender identity, gender expression, genetic information, and sexual orientation. I'd like to review the policy. The William S. Hart policy prohibits unlawful discrimination and/or harassment of any student, employee, or job applicant on the basis of actual or perceived race, color, ethnicity, national origin, immigration status, ancestry, religion, age, marital status, pregnancy, parental status, physical, mental disability, medical condition, military or veteran status, political affiliation, sex, gender identity, gender expression, genetic information, and sexual orientation. I hope that in your last round of questionings, board members will ask each candidate this question before making their selection. Are you willing not only to support, but to adhere to this anti-discrimination policy as formulated by the William S. Hart District? Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Glenda.
Ta-da, I'm back in the state. Okay, as you all know, I really like to speak my mind. Some of you don't care. I really don't care if you don't care. We are here to choose someone for the board that is going to be here for our children. I have heard so much about we're doing this, we're one heart, blah, blah, blah. I haven't seen that with my grandchild, all right? And as far as us not being Glendale, trust me, we're getting there. So we need a person up there that is there for the children, is there for the protection of them, and to allow the parents parent these kids. I am so sick and tired of hearing that for my grandchild, well, my teacher said this, I have to do this and that. No, you don't. You do as your parents tell you to do. You go to school to learn something. You go to learn something that maybe your parents didn't know. Like, I don't know calculus, but my grandson does. He learned it at Highland High School. I haven't heard of anybody in this district that is taking the courses and enjoying it. My grandson did. The most important part for me at this point is we have someone in the community that sits on that seat that is in our area that cares about our kids, our parents, and do not want to have the instances that we've had in Glendale. We need to stop that here and now, and I think that we have one candidate that knows what they're talking about, having been there, done that, and teaching their kids learn from our mistakes. We learn from history. History wasn't made a couple years ago. It was made 50, 60, 70 years ago. Let's teach the kids that. If we don't teach them that, they're not going anywhere. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Diane Zimmerman.
Hello. Actually, I really don't have a whole lot to say, except that I appreciate each and every candidate that spoke, and I thought they all spoke very well. There were a couple that really shined, especially one, and I just hope you make I just hope you make a choice that's seriously going to benefit all of Santa Clarita Valley, and I just want to thank all of the candidates for coming, and especially one who almost didn't make it because she had a family emergency, and she asked if she could Zoom, and she was told no. So I won't say the name because that's not right, but it's not right that she wasn't allowed to Zoom when so much Zooming is being done these days, and this person went to a great deal of effort to just get here. So I appreciate all of you that spoke. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that concludes our public comments. So now it's time for the board to record their top candidate in writing. We each have a sheet in front of us that lists everyone's name. And as Mr. Coleman said, this is viewed as a straw poll of initial positions. So I'd like to ask each board member to take that sheet of paper and record their top candidate, and then you can fold that in half and pass it my way, and we'll have Debbie read things off. Do you have a question? Yes, I don't seem to have a paper. No, it's this one right here.
I can use the same one, okay?
Or you can do that, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, just use that one there, yep.
Okay. Dr. Moore voted for Eric Anderson. Mr. Messina voted for Eric Anderson.
Whoa, whoa, no. Did I click the wrong one? I meant Aaron Wilson. Please fix that.
Mr. Messina voted for Aaron Wilson. Mrs. Storley voted for Aaron Wilson. And Mr. Jensen voted for Aaron Wilson.
I move that we appoint Aaron Wilson to the open position for school board.
A second.
We have a motion by Mrs. Storley and a second by Mr. Messina to appoint Aaron Wilson to the open school board position. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And the chair says aye.
I'm sorry, what did you?
I didn't say anything.
Oh,
Was that 4 ayes?
I don't know.
4 ayes.
So the
Unanimous.
motion carries unanimously 4-0 that Aaron Wilson is appointed as the new board member. Aaron, congratulations, and she will be sworn in at our July meeting. Is that
Correct,
correct?
July
Mr.
19th.
Mas-
And I want to thank everyone for stepping up. This is a big job, and I think everyone that stepped up understood that. And I particularly appreciated reading all of your information and how much you care about the school district. So thank you so much, all of you.
A lot to step up. It's a lot to do, this kind of thing.
And I, as board president, would like to also mention that we have spent considerable time, myself and Mr. Kuhlman and other board members, in orchestrating this process and planning and preparing for it. And I do appreciate, one who's run for public office several times, appreciate everyone's participation. This is what it's all about, is having people participate in the community to put their best foot forward and seek what's best for our students, parents, and the community. So I greatly appreciate everyone's participation. Thank you all for being here today.
Thank you.
It's the end of this part of the meeting.
Yes.
We take a few minute break for them to.
Yes, we'll take since we're well ahead of time, we'll take a 5-minute break. Hop along there. No, take your time. Don't want to workers' comp. Take your time.
Thank you.
So he was a movie star, right? But there was actually,
Not you, Dave. Oh.
no,
okay.
there was actually a famous football player named Howard Hopalong Cassidy around that same time. And he had that nickname. So Google it, Colin, and you'll find out that I'm telling the truth. He didn't go to Hart High School, though. That was Joe Cap. Anyway, we're going to reconvene our board meeting. And I just did want to mention, it's about 9:30. Dr. Moore has an important business call at 10 o'clock, so perhaps we can just try to move through the meeting so that we're done in time for Dr. Moore's call. If needs be, we'll take a break and so she can make her call, but I'm sensing we can probably finish by 10. All right, so our next item is California School Dashboard Local Indicators. This is an information item, and Mr. LeBaron has the presentation on this.
Good morning. It is a pleasure to be here this morning, especially to hear the conversation and see you all work and selection of the new board member. It's really a privilege to be part of that, or at least listen to and hear, so thank you. This morning we're here to talk about the annual report on the local indicators. We hear this every spring. You actually, early summer, you hear me talk about this, and not a whole lot has changed, but I want to walk you through the process and share with you the information and data that we gathered and exactly what has changed and hopefully inform you of those pieces. California's academic accountability system is based on multiple measures that assess how our district and schools are meeting the needs of its students. Performance on these measures is reported through the California School Dashboard, more commonly known as the dashboard. The dashboard includes a concise set of state indicators and a concise set of local indicators. The state indicators are those indicators for which the state manages the collection of data and reporting of results. Student performance on math and English assessments and high school graduation rates are examples of the state indicators that are reported out annually on the dashboard. Local indicators are the indicators that require the district to collect and reflect on locally available information in 5 specific areas. This morning I will share with you the outcome of our district's reflection in those 5 areas. The first, appropriately assigned teachers access to curriculum-aligned materials and safe, clean, and functional school facilities. The data we pulled in reflected the following. First of all, appropriately assigned teachers. We had 1 teacher, number of misassigned teachers of English learners, we had 1. That was a teacher who had yet to complete the CLAD or the requirements for the CLAD instruction. That teacher is retiring or did retire this year, so if all continues as planned, that number will be 0 next year. Total teacher misassignments, 9. Those misassignments came as folks left mid-year for different reasons. Kind of a pandemic thing is still kind of slowly minimizing, but that we had teachers leave mid-year, give withdrawal notices, and leave. We were 9 of those this year, and that plays directly into the vacant teacher positions of 9. Those 2 are tied together. So those are numbers from this year. Access to curriculum-aligned materials. All students had access to instructional materials for both home and class. We had 1 Williams report this year. It was a situation at one of our high schools where the AP calculus class, the textbook was really getting out of date with the curriculum that needed to be taught. The teacher was supplementing it beautifully, doing a great job with it, but that book is on the textbook adoption list for next year and was prior to that form being filled out and submitted, but that book will be replaced going into next year. Thirdly, safe, clean, and functional school facilities. The annual school facilities condition evaluation scored 20 items as below good. That is 20 items in our 17 schools were marked sometime last year as needing to be addressed. None of those items were in any way causing problems on campus as far as safety. They were all paint, replacement of facility switches, and so on. There was nothing that was in any way putting any student in danger or causing problems on campus. Area 1. Area 2, implementation of state academic standards. In this area, the process used was I met with or gathered data from the key individuals in our district who oversee these areas and made decisions based upon the 5 areas that we need to reflect on. The rating scale that they require us to use is the numbers of 1 to 5, 1 being exploration and research, basically things are just starting, down to area number 5, full implementation and sustainability. And where we are fall from 1 to 5 is our response and how well we're doing in those areas. The 5 statements that we're given to self-reflect on are, number 1, providing professional learning for teachers to the state's academic standards and/or curriculum frameworks. In these areas, as I mentioned earlier, we've seen these year to year annually. I report out on these annually. This year, I want to just point the areas that would be different from previous reports. That red X down below is the one particular area. The other 4 above have not changed from last year. But under history, social sciences, providing professional learning, in that area, we have spent all of last year reviewing, looking at and deciding new instructional materials for 3 of our social studies classes, being World History 7, US History 8, and then the Mod Civ World History in high school as well. All 3 of those content areas spent last year researching and pulling in new materials, and those materials were brought to you in May for approval. That work over that year has really put the emphasis on those teachers beginning to develop and look at and align their instruction to the new materials, so a lot of learning was provided to them. That's why that score went up from a 2 to a 3 this year. The second area, making instructional materials available on campuses. As you can see, all those really, the top 4 have not changed. However, history, social science is a 4 now. It was a 2 because those books I talked about moments ago were extremely old and needed to be replaced. The materials were updated, and all those areas I mentioned earlier, grade 7, grade 8, high school, grade 10, are all rolling out with new instructional materials in social studies this fall. Implementing policies or programs to support staff in identifying areas where they can improve. You see 2 red X's in there I think is important. Number 1 was the ELA area where it went from a 4 to a 5. It did that because this year we finally kind of fine-tuned the implementation of a common assessment for English language arts. It was something we have done for years prior to the pandemic. The pandemic put it on hold, and last year we brought it back, and I think we fine-tune it now where every year our English language arts students, grades 7 through 11, write to a common assessment. As it happens in the fall, happens in the spring. Teachers score that assessment and then can reflect on their instruction based on what students' responses were or how well students wrote to that assignment. The other area where you'll see the red X is history, social sciences, and again, that is where we're in a process now of rolling out new materials, and as a result, instruction and the learning and creation of curriculum guides will be focused strongly in those areas going forward because of the new materials coming in next year. Fourth, they're implementing each of the following academic standards adopted by the State Board for all students. These are the areas you hadn't seen yet. The other ones had those other content areas. You'll see Career Tech Education is the one with the red X this year, and that really is because of the work of Dr. Hoffman and her team putting together the CTE program in the Hart District. They have done an outstanding job creating a program that has aligned prior courses to the new state requirements, looking at pathways that align better and more appropriately with what needs are. And so the Career Tech Education really is a sustainable piece of curriculum or content areas in the Hart District. That's why it was bumped up to a 5 this year. Final area is the areas where we can help identify and help teachers learn what they need to do next. The first area is identify professional learning needs of groups of teachers. That's scored a 5. We do that really well. Jan Daisher and her department submit annual surveys to teachers asking, what do you need? How can we help you? That's done annually, and I think is a huge asset in helping us identify the needs of individual teachers. Individual piece on the second one is a 4 out of 5. That's because not every teacher has to respond. That survey sent out, it is voluntary. Teachers don't have to respond. Not every teacher does respond. So there may be some teachers out there we don't know what they need because they haven't engaged in the process. The third area provides support for teachers on standards that have not yet mastered. That's where really we've made a step this year into the fall with the bringing on of content specialists in math, English, and science that will help that bump up to a 4 or 5 going forward. The content specialists will be able to apply or reach out to the individual teachers and be the connection between the district, the office, and the classroom. And so that is really where that score of 3 in that area will bump up to a 4 or 5 going into the future. The third area for reflection, parent engagement, the process used. I asked site individuals at our school sites to send out surveys to different groups on their campuses and then respond. The surveys asked the folks receiving it to respond to certain questions that were part of the tool that is given to us. They reflected and ranked it on the same score scale that you saw earlier, from 1 to 5. We then asked them to respond with examples and give us recommendations going forward how we could even do better in these areas. And there are 3 areas of parent engagement that we've asked to self-reflect on. The first, building relationships between school staff and families. One of the questions was, rate the district's progress in creating welcoming environments for all families in the community. Across the board, in almost every area, from every recipient, the district scored a 4 or 5 for their school site and the district. People feel welcomed and able to access schools and the district office as far as finding out, getting information, things that they actually shared, seeing the principals, administrators out in front in the morning, greeting at dismissal times, and being able to call and access folks in the office. Those were all examples of what they reported on as why they ranked the score so high. Another question, rate the district's progress in supporting staff to learn about each family's strengths, cultures, language, and goals for their children. Did not rank as high. That is something that obviously, as Ms. Daisher shares here after mine, you'll probably hear certain pieces of the LCAP that was really kind of been driven by some of that response there. But also keep in mind, I think that some of these things, and I'll refer to it again in another question, some of these questions we're asked to respond to were written with the elementary school in mind. That really is more of an elementary school flavored question than it is for a school site with a teacher with 180 students who may change that semester over the school year. So just keep that in mind, but it is an area that obviously we are looking at how we can improve. Recommendations that the people shared. 1, more multilingual staff in front offices. That was one of the recommendations that came in from the group. And 2, identify successful programs or districts, and then model or provide professional development based on what you learn from those other districts. Areas that we'll definitely take a look at as we go forward. The third piece in this area, the second piece, building partnerships for student outcomes. The questions were, 1, rate the district's progress in providing professional learning and support for teachers and principals to improve a school's capacity to partner with families. Rated very high, a 4 out of the 5. They felt strongly that the district and sites were doing what they could, as much as they could, to help make that happen. Rate the district's progress in implementing policies or programs for teachers to meet the families and students, to discuss student progress and ways to work together to support and improve student outcomes. And again, I go back to what I said a moment ago. It sounds more like really a question that would be much more easily answered or worked with by an elementary district or elementary school than it would a secondary school, as with, again, students, as many we have, class changes and so forth. However, it is something that we will definitely spend time looking at. Recommendations that were shared. Continue using Zoom meeting as an option. That was a big positive in every response, that they like to be able to connect to meetings, whether it be school, whether it be board meetings, through Zoom, through social media, because they can do it from wherever they are, at home, at work, and so that was a big plus. They would ask us to continue doing so. Create a campaign to encourage parent attendance at school meetings and events. That was really, what can we do in public information to really encourage folks, remind them of the value of being involved in school, even when you're in high school, you're a 10th grade student, 11th grade student, 12th grade student, don't lose that connection. They felt strongly we should create an ongoing campaign to be educating our community on the value of doing that. Finally, identify successful programs, districts, and model, provide professional development. The same response that we had earlier is, what can we learn from other districts, other schools that are doing things in these areas that we could learn from, draw from, and kind of learn going forward. Number 3, seeking input for decision making. The questions. Rate the district's progress in building the capacity of and supporting family members to effectively engage in advisory groups and decision making. Ranked very high. I think it probably started with even reference to our our work in creating in the past, the plans we have, the focus we have, the One Heart work we did, all tied into, I think, leading into people feeling much more engaged and able to access and be involved with decisions and groups and meetings that involve or whose purpose is to make decisions. Rate the district's progress providing all families with opportunities to provide input on policies and programs, implementing strategies to reach and seek input from any underrepresented groups in the school community. They rate that a mid-level of 3. And again, I go back to saying, I think you'll see probably conversations or information on access and equity in our LCAP that Ms. Daisher will be sharing momentarily. Again, a lot of it was kind of flavored by things we learned from our surveys. Some recommendations. Meeting topics crucial for engagement of every very busy parents. That was kind of seemed like a no-brainer. The question is, if we're going to ask busy people to come to meetings, let's make sure the topics being discussed are relevant and meaningful. If things can be done by email, do it by email. If things can be done by newsletters, do it by newsletters. But if you're really going to ask people to come and engage in conversation, the response was, then let's make sure our topics reflect that to encourage folks to put aside busy schedules and come to meetings. Translation services also kind of referred to across the responses in the surveys. Make sure at the meetings there are folks that can translate. Make sure email invites are done in multiple languages. And also that phone calls go home to encourage folks. And it was interesting too because we have more than just Spanish speakers in the Valley needing translation. And they wanted us to keep that in mind. You know, we have a large Korean population and so on. And so there's other things when they talk about translation, be more open on the needs of the number of translations being needed. Next area, school climate survey. The purpose of the school climate survey, it had 34 questions on it. It went out, we do it annually. We report on this, and I know all of you are very much aware of it, but the purpose as far as in this area is to provide a valid measure of student perception of school safety and connectedness. How are our students feeling? What's their perception of their connectedness to school, and are they feeling safe on campuses? Mr. Messini, you have a question?
Yeah, Dave, they had 32 questions on the survey?
34.
34, and it went out to the kids?
I'm sorry?
Did it go out just to the students?
Yes.
Do you know what percentage you got back and how many actually?
I'm going to go there right now.
Okay, cool.
Okay. As you can see, first of all, the survey was voluntary. We can't make students take it. So what we did, we really asked our 8th grade U.S. history teachers and our high school Mod Civ, World, and AP Euro teachers to offer it to their sophomores during a 2-week period in early May, end of April, early May. Try to avoid AP testing to make it as non-complex as possible. It was voluntary, but yet 2,461 8th graders took that survey, which is 76% of the 8th grade class. And 3,676 10th grade students completed the survey, which is 71% of the 10th grade class. These 5 questions listed up here were specifically meant to help us come to a conclusion on, are our students feeling connected and safe on campus? So it says, number 1, if I did not feel physically or emotionally safe at my school, I would tell a teacher, a counselor, or other adult on campus. 57% of 8th graders said, yes, I would. And 61% of 10th graders said, yes, I would. That is a very, very small change from last year's scores. A 1 or 2% difference from last year. At number 2, at my school, there is a teacher or other adult who I believe cares about my well-being and success. 86% 8th graders said, yes, that's true, I believe that. 84% of 10th graders said, yes, that's true, I do believe that. And that, especially in the 10th grade, that growth, there was a 12% growth from last year. Last year, it was only 72% of 10th graders said, I believe that. That 12% growth is substantial. And I think it's something that when we shared with principals at the end of the school year, that they are looking at to see what were we doing that helped create that. Maybe it's a natural response from coming back on campus now after being home, after the pandemic. We're not quite sure yet, but we're obviously looking at why was that growth so significant? What caused it? Number 3, if a student tells an adult on campus that someone is bullying the adult will do something to help. The answers we looked at were yes and I don't know. It was 92%, 8th grade said, responded with a yes or I don't know. And 91% of 10th graders responded yes, I don't know, adults will help. Or they've never experienced it, which is a good thing as well. Those numbers are unchanged from previous years. But the lower question as far as student connectedness to school, I feel close to other students in my classes. 78% of 8th graders said yes. 69% of 10th graders said yes. And that's a growth, not a lot, but 2% of growth in 8th grade and a 5% growth in 10th grade. Again, which I think goes with the large growth in the other adults on campus are trying to help me. We saw with the 10th graders earlier. Final question, this school year I participated in school-sponsored events and activities. That question is important because one of the biggest key factors of looking at a school's safety and success is engagement of students in activities at the school. Are students engaging in things at the school? You see 68% of the 8th graders said, I'm involved in something at my school, as well as 73% of 10th graders said, I'm involved in something at my school. Obviously, we'd love to have more, but those numbers are good numbers. And I think it speaks largely to the resources and activities that school sites are producing to engage students in some level, whether it be clubs, activities, leadership. All those areas are areas that would be included in these numbers. Any other questions on the school survey? I'm flying through, so I'm going to get a 10 o'clock deadline for Dr. Moore. All right. Access to a broad course of study. To make this determination, a review of student schedules, course offerings, and course enrollment was performed to assess the extent to which all students had access to and were enrolled in a broad course of study. Course enrollment reports were developed using the district's student information system, Infinite Campus. The reports identified access and enrollment based on grade spans, unduplicated students, and students with exceptional needs. And what it showed was that for the most part, that the district students had full access to a broad course of studies as defined by Ed Code. You can see the Ed Code there. Findings that came out of that study as well was, one, there was a reduction in enrollment in AP and honors courses, but the reduction was not group specific, just overall, which is a continuation of last year. Post-pandemic, so obviously we need to work on we need to work on engaging students back into those courses, but for the past couple years, they have not been. Full implementation of integrated and designated ELD continues district-wide. Again, I would go back and point to the work that Mrs. Dasher and Mrs. Wilson are doing across the district to ensure that our EL students have the support they need to be successful in the classes they're in. English learners in high school were enrolled in grade-level appropriate classes and had access to the same content and coursework as their peers. Those are three areas that came out of that study as reportable information. Challenges that came out, I listed there just as we look forward. There were things that are telling me that we're going to have to be putting some emphasis on looking at certain areas. The first one, finding the best resources to work with the growing number of students or English learners. That number is growing, and we need to make sure we respond properly to that and well. Students experiencing homelessness, again, numbers that are growing. And those who have social emotional needs that extend well beyond the scope that typically and historically seen among our students in the Hart District. Again, a growth that has been growing since the pandemic. We're going to have to, and we are addressing those things, but we need to make sure we don't cease from doing that, and we put more emphasis on being more creative and problem solving. The final one, find avenues and opportunities to more fully integrate students with disabilities into general education environments. That is a requirement that we're looking at, and we're looking at ways to make that happen. We're working tightly and strongly with our special education department, with Mrs. Joanna White and her team, to see how we can do that in a meaningful way that is good for every student on both sides of the coin. And those are the 5 areas. Questions I can answer for you.
Questions, board?
I've got a couple questions or comments, but do you want to go first, or? Okay, all right. You know, we have busy parents out there, and when you talk about access, I know we have some committees and some meetings that happen. Well, this is an exception, but during the mornings, 9 o'clock or what have you. Some of them have even let me know that's tough because they have jobs. So maybe we need to look at moving those meetings to later on in the afternoon, or at night for those people as well. You talk about reaching out to the different communities. Working with some people over in Stevenson Ranch and what have you. Maybe we need to look at some kind of liaison program for the Asian community, Hispanic, Black, and other communities where they know they have a person they can go to kind of get their message out or help them as well. You know, when you talk about homelessness, there are some people that run with that and think that our homeless situation here at the Hart District is running rampant. And I've spoken with Kerry Quashin several times about, you know, kids, teens that are homeless in town. First of all, how does the state define homeless? Do you know what that is?
Sorry?
Do you know how the state defines homelessness?
Oh, the state does know it. Sorry, I don't.
Yeah, basically, if you're not living at the home that you're paying rent on, that you have utilities, but you're homeless. If you're at grandma's house and you're in a room at grandma's house and grandpa's house, you're considered homeless. Kerry says most of what he's finding with the teens are drug and abandonment. Families who have actually left their kids here, or they've moved out and their kids don't want to move with them. So we need to address that. We need to find out what those issues are and how to get that information to them and help them out as well. So, and I'm not suggesting that we're not doing that by any stretch, but I know that it's a common thread that I hear throughout the year from different parents and groups. That's all I have to say.
Dr. Moore, do you have any questions or comments?
I don't have any questions. I am glad to see some improvements in the areas around student perceptions of school safety. That's reassuring to see, and understanding that we still have a lot of work to do in those areas. So glad that we are focusing on that.
Really?
I agree.
And safety is my concern too. It's paramount and important for wellness in all respects. So good information. Thank you, Dave, for the presentation, and we'll keep pushing forward to do the best that we can and increase numbers, and thank you again.
Thank you.
All right. Our next two items are actually like second readings. We have Mrs. Dasher now on the LCAP. We've already had a public hearing. Then we have Mr. Peshek on the final budget. So I think we can kind of move quickly through these as if they're kind of like a second reading. With that, Jan, please go ahead.
Thank you. 2 weeks ago, on June 14th, the Local Control and Accountability Plan, also known as the LCAP, for next year, for the 2023-24 school year, was presented for review. It is the third year of a 3-year LCAP plan, and the board, the public, and all of our community educational partners were invited to review the actions and services in the plan. And since then, there have been no additional input or comments provided through the website or any other means. Our county educational supervisors have also given our plan provisionary approval, saying that the way it is written meets the state requirements, especially for serving our unduplicated student groups. So this morning, I would request that the board adopt the 2023-24 LCAP, which will be submitted to our Los Angeles County Office of Education for final approval and submission to the state on our behalf.
So move to adopt. Second.
Motion by Mrs. Storley, second by Dr. Moore to approve the 2023-24 Local Control and Accountability Plan. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And the chair says aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Jan.
Thank you
Appreciate
so
all your
much.
hard work with that.
Appreciate it.
All right, next is the 2023-24 budget. Mr. Peshek.
Thank you, Mr. Jensen, members of the board. A public hearing to receive comments relative to the district's proposed 23-24 budget was held at the board meeting on June 14th, 2023. We've received no comments, and there have been no modifications to that budget document. It is represented to the board for review and adoption this afternoon. My only notes would be that the governor and the legislature have come to an agreement on the final budget, and yesterday both houses voted on it, and the governor signed it last evening. So we do have a final budget. It maintained the COLA that the budget governor had projected, so there will be no additional funding coming through to our revenue numbers. You won't see any changes to that. And, two areas that were of concern to a lot of school districts were some restricted funds in the arts and music area, as well as the Learning Recovery Emergency Block Grant, which the governor had proposed to cut significantly. And the legislature dialed that back. And while they are receiving some minor cuts to help balance the budget this year, they are not as draconian in nature as originally proposed. That being said, those restorations are restricted, and they will not change the ending fund balance. With that, I recommend that the board adopt the 23-24 budget for the William S. Hart Union High School District.
So moved.
Motion by Dr. Moore, second by Mrs. Storley to adopt the final 2023-24 budget as presented by Mr. Peschik. All in favor?
Aye.
Chair says aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Peschik. Appreciate your hard work with that. Move on now to our final action item, resolution number 22/23-48, designating certain general funds as committed fund balance. Mr. Peschik.
A few years ago, the legislature changed the rules on how school districts report their ending fund balances. And due to the state's budget position, that law was triggered last year. And remember, last year, the board, we had to designate any reserve above 10%. How are we going to use that? Is it going to be held over for what reason? And we have designated a small amount above the 10% to address deficit spending over the next 3 years. Because as you saw in the budget that was just adopted, we are deficit spending over the next 3 years. And so this is just a legal requirement saying we're going to use that money for deficit spending.
Okay, very good.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Messina, second by Dr. Moore to approve resolution number 22/23-48 as stated. All in favor?
Aye.
Chair says aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Peschik. Our last item is the consent calendar. Unless a board member has a question concerning a particular item and asks that it be withdrawn from the consent calendar, the governing board approves all the items at one time.
Move the consent calendar.
Second.
Motion by Dr. Moore, second by Mr. Messina to approve the consent calendar. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And the chair says aye. All right, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn in favor of America's birthday.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Messina, second by Dr. Moore to adjourn in honor of America's birthday, July 4th. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, but it's still I second. But
Okay.
when they signed it.
Hey, but
We're adjourned
we're
at
partying on the
10:03.
4th. We're cutting
10:04.
cake on the 4th. There you go.